Last night, Tottenham Hotspur drew their second Champions League game away from home at Bodo Glimt. And to be honest with you, the performance was a lot worse than the result would suggest. 2-2 away from home is never the worst result in the Champions League, but there was a lot to sort of delve into with that performance, both in a negative and, I was about to say in a positive way, but not much positive, but we're going to find the positives today, and we're going to talk about the negatives too. But if you are new to the channel, please like, please subscribe. We do this after every single game. We do previews for games as well, and yeah, if you enjoy what you see, then that would be greatly appreciated. But I just kind of want to get straight on into it. Now, first things first, obviously, it wasn't ideal, right? What we saw throughout the 90 minutes when we went 2-0 down, I was worried, and it felt like a big opportunity missed at that point to be losing away from home at Bodo Glimt, you know, a place that we won comfortably at last year. In a, you know, with our Champions League run, we should really be finishing in the top 8. I do think that's a realistic target for Spurs. We don't have the most difficult Champions League run. We obviously won our first game at home against Villarreal, 1-0. And in this game, I was expecting us to sort of go there and take advantage of that and be in a really strong position moving forwards in the Champions League. But at the end of the day, like I said, when we were 2-0 down, I was really concerned. And the performance started concerning me in the 3rd minute, really, early on in that game. I mean, this kind of situation was happening way too often last night, where our midfield seemed really exposed. There seemed to be runners sort of heading towards the edge of the box that were free and picking up the ball in great shooting, with great shooting opportunities, with little to no pressure on them, and that was quite worrying to me. I think overall with the performance, before we talk about the specifics, overall with the performance, I just thought we looked a bit fatigued. I thought we looked a little bit almost worn out and run down from the first minute. There was no sort of intensity in closing players down. There was no sort of, we seemed like a lack of almost alertness from some of our midfielders, from Sarr, who I know has missed the last couple of games, but Bentancur as well, Bergvall at times defensively, our wingers when they were tracking back, there just seemed like a real lack of almost urgency to close down the Bodo Glimt players, to sort of make their life difficult. And like I said, from the 3rd minute, Bodo Glimt found it quite easy to sort of start picking up the ball in these areas, driving towards our penalty area and creating, you know, good opportunities for themselves, and that was frustrating from early on. But I mean, this was the big one, right? You know, 7 minutes into the game, we've been under a little bit of pressure, but then Bergvall nicks the ball back in midfield, makes that run forward, a lovely ball in to Richarlison, and obviously Richarlison expects the defender to clear it, but this was his one real chance for the night. I know that he was involved in the second goal later on, but that was an own goal, really. And this finish, I've been getting a bit frustrated with Richarlison recently, to be completely honest with you. I think the lack of Solanke and Kolo Muani really doesn't help him, and our striker situation's a bit of a nightmare at the moment, because I think Kolo Muani should be back for Leeds, but will only be there, you know, on the bench. It was really this kind of period that we needed him to build up his fitness and start taking minutes off Richarlison in a meaningful way, because Richarlison looks knackered right now, and he's not contributing anywhere near enough that we needed our number 9 to be contributing. I think this kind of chance almost summed up what we've seen from him in the last couple of weeks. Just didn't expect it to fall to him, which in a striker you've always got to anticipate that ball will reach you. Sort of sticks out a toe at it and sort of pokes it towards the goal, but with absolutely no conviction in the strike. And obviously the goalkeeper collects it really comfortably, and it was a big opportunity missed for Spurs in the opening 7 minutes to sort of take the lead and go into a strong position for the rest of the game. And that was really frustrating. When you're away from home in the Champions League, I don't care who you're playing, these are the kind of chances or opportunities that you just have to take. You absolutely have to take, and obviously we didn't take that. And the next 20 minutes, again, really lethargic, really sloppy, really poor, and that was just summed up by the penalty that Bentancur gave away. A late challenge, sliding in to try and block the cross. A really poor challenge, in my opinion, by the way. Like, definitely a penalty, and he was lucky to just escape by giving away the penalty. That was definitely a card, in my opinion. But, you know, just reckless, a poor decision. And I think Bentancur was somebody who had a really poor game last night, and I don't think he's been great recently, to be honest. There's obviously rumours of a new contract for him, and I gave my thoughts on that on Twitter yesterday, and I'm a bit unsure. On that, to be completely honest. That's not reactionary, not just because of this. Last season, back end of last season, coming into this season, I don't think he's been in the best form, but giving away that penalty, and Spurs got lucky. We got lucky that it was blazed over the bar and they missed it, and we got away with one there. Managed to stay at 0-0. I took this screenshot at the 37th minute because, honestly, look at that. We're playing, in that picture, we're playing a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We're playing a 1-7-2. as our formation in that picture. And like I said, there were situations like this happening time and time again. Their danger man was it Haug? I think that's how you pronounce his name. The number 10, obviously scored both of their goals. He was a threat all evening long, and the way that he was just able to peel off, find space on the edge of the penalty area was quite alarming when we're playing with a midfield three of Bentancur, Sarr and Bergvall. When you've got three sort of number 8s playing in that midfield three, you shouldn't be giving their attacking midfielder that much space on the edge of the box, and that was quite concerning. This wasn't even from a set piece situation. This was genuinely from open play that we ended up in a situation like this. And again, I just think it was a issue with the intensity and an issue with sort of how we were closing men down, and just almost like at times it's quite basic stuff really, isn't it? And I think defensively we obviously set up to be solid last night, but that didn't really translate to what was actually happening on the pitch. We were quite open, we were sort of not putting any sort of pressure on the ball in these areas, and that was allowing them to create chance after chance in the first half. And I mean, this miss, again, we were so lucky to get away with one at the end of the first half. Their number 19 sort of strolling into the penalty area, absolutely so much time and space, nobody following him, nobody tracking him, nobody closing him down, and he had to score there. He blazes it over the bar from about 8 yards out. But again, another warning sign, another wake-up call for Spurs in that first half that we didn't seem to take, that we didn't seem to sort of react to that warning sign and sort of buck our ideas up, and that was obviously hugely frustrating. And then we get to the second half. 7 minutes into the game, you're thinking, we've seen no changes at half-time. Okay, fair enough. We're going to see a different attitude, a different kind of performance in the second half. No, not for the first 7 minutes at least. And obviously, it was coming at some point, and Hard cuts inside. A lovely finish into the far corner. Did really well here. But again, what are you noticing? Their midfielders wandering into the box, receiving the ball, creating space for themselves, and having absolutely no pressure on them when they are taking the shot. And it was going to happen at some point. They were going to find the quality to score. And at that point, we're 1-0 down. I'm worried at this stage because, you know, we're 52 minutes into the game. We haven't really shown anything by that Richarlison chance, which kind of felt like a one-off. It wasn't coming from any sustained pressure or anything like that. And we were 1-0 down away from home in the Champions League, and it felt like we were about to miss out on a good opportunity to pick up more points in the Champions League. Then obviously 2 minutes later we sort of responded. I thought, you know, brilliant set piece situation. We've responded, that's great. Will this be the sort of spark that ignites a better performance from this point forward and we can go on and win the game? And then VAR happened. Don't know what Mickey van der Ven is doing, pulling their defender back like that. It's just one of those things where you might think it's soft, whatever, but it's not something that you can do in the modern game with VAR. That's the kind of thing is always going to get pulled up. And at the end of the day, he held the defender back from clearing the ball, which allowed it to go through, hit the post, come back into the box. Bentancur to flick it. Lovely finish, by the way, from Bentancur. But yeah, that was a frustration during the game. And look, again, about the actual decision, I think it's soft, but I think it's one of those things that you know you can't do in the modern game with VAR, and I think it's poor from Mickey. He just holds on for that split second too long. If he'd let go at this point here and allowed the sort of defender to get back, then that would have been fine, but obviously it didn't happen like that. Don't know why I've got 2 screenshots of it. You saw it first time, but again, this was their second goal, sort of 10 minutes later, and you're thinking, we've just equalised, we just had it disallowed. That's the spark then. We got Xavi on, we got Kudus on. Be the spark. And it just wasn't. Another poor, really, really sloppy, poor goal to concede. It was so frustrating, this goal. Van der Ven obviously passes it back to Vicario. It's not the best pass back in the world, but Vicario has 2 options. He can either take a touch or he can clear it first time and get it up the pitch. Vicario's distribution in recent weeks has been nothing short of abysmal, genuinely abysmal. The amount of slice miss kicks that he's made, sort of trying to clear the ball out from the back. Mickey van der Ven's taking goal kicks for him. I think that's a damning sort of thing for a goalkeeper to ever have, for a centre-back to be taking goal kicks, because you can't actually get the ball far enough up the pitch. It's a little bit embarrassing, to be honest with you, and I'm getting a bit frustrated with Vicario recently, if I'm being completely honest, but once he clears that, it goes absolutely up in the air, putting Jed Spence under pressure. But Spencer just head that ball, just head it further away. He sort of spins, tries to sort of take a touch, tries to clear it. But again, it's not really Spencer's fault here. There's not really much that he could have done with that ball. He got unfortunate, obviously. The ball fell to the edge of the penalty area to this guy again, who was just so dangerous all night. Beats Pedro Porro way too easily. Porro stands there and allows him to just sort of drift past him. But, you know, again, you've got to give credit where credit is due. That's a brilliant finish. It's an absolutely outstanding finish, and sort of wraps it with his weak foot into that bottom corner. And at that point, you're thinking, 2-0 down, we've shown nothing. 65th minute, nightmare. Just a nightmare. Nightmare performance from Spurs. We're not going to get anything out of the game. Going to leave ourselves in a difficult position going into the rest of this Champions League sort of run. We did have two quite easy, well, not easy. Bodo Glimt away from home. I wouldn't say it's easy, but it is a game that you would expect at least a point in. At least a point, if not three, ideally, of course. And sort of at that point, I was really, really worried. But then, again, 2 minutes later, I don't know why it takes us conceding a goal to sort of fire us into action, sort of like that match. Like, I don't get why it takes that. It's super frustrating. But anyway, had a set piece situation, a dead ball situation, which seems to be our absolute best chance of scoring a goal at the moment. From open play, we've looked pretty horrific, to be honest, in terms of chance creation, but I'm going to get onto that in a minute. But Pedro Porro, with a moment of absolute magic, with a moment of quality, a sensational ball in from him. Obviously, Mickey rises, meets it, a great header from Mickey van der Ven. Sometimes he's got a 50p head, sometimes I'm not too confident about him in the air, but a dominant header, a great header, a captain's goal to get us back into the game. And then sort of from that point, we did really start growing. Mohamed Kudus, I thought, was a real spark in the game. Sometimes I felt like he held onto the ball for a little bit too long, but he was a real spark in the game in terms of what he ignited and what he was sort of doing, getting the ball, driving forwards, taking on his man, being a positive influence in the game that we were missing before he came on. Xavi Simons as well. I thought he was a welcome addition on the pitch. Just seemed to sort of calm everybody down, just, you know, driving forward with the ball. Again, wasn't anything amazing, but just allowed us to sort of sustain attacks a little bit better, to keep the pressure on Bodo. And obviously they were 2-0 up at this point, 2-1 up at this point, sorry. So they were sort of really sitting back and trying to protect their lead. But this chance here, a brilliant ball in from Mohamed Kudus. Wilson Odobert meets it with his head, hits the crossbar. And again, you know, slightly frustrating, but we're building at this point. We're building something. And then 5 minutes later, sort of the game goes into a bit of a lull again, and Bodo have another amazing chance to go 3-1 up and to really wrap the game up. Again, what are you noticing here? You're noticing a player with absolutely acres of space in the penalty area to get his shot away, hits the crossbar here, incredibly lucky to not be 3-1 down. But then we capitalise on that. Archie Gray with a fantastic bit of midfield play, playing it out to Pedro Porro, plays it back to Kudus, plays it through to Archie Gray, and it's a lovely ball in from Archie Gray, which sort of forces the keeper to parry it away, parry it straight onto his centre-half and force the own goal. And I thought Archie Gray had a really, really good impact on the game. And like I said, lovely little link-up play over here with Kudus, with Porro and with Gray. And I want to talk a little bit about Archie Gray specifically because I think he deserves a chance to start on Saturday. I really do. I think that you look at the performances of Bentancur, I don't think Sarr, maybe he's dealing with a little knock or whatever it is right now, but Archie Gray has made a great impact in his cameos this season. He was really good against Doncaster in the League Cup. I know it's Doncaster, and I know it's potentially easier coming on and sort of having cameos rather than starting games, but I think he deserves a chance to play on Saturday, and I don't think our midfielders really sort of made their claim in the past couple of weeks to say that you can't, any of them are undroppable. And I think reward him with his form, with the energy that he's brought in the past couple of substitute appearances, and I think that he deserves a chance to start the game. I really do, and I think I'd play him next to Paulinho with Simons in the 10, and I just want Frank to be a little bit braver in that way. That's one of my things with Thomas Frank right now. I just want him to be a little bit braver, and there's no need to, talking about Frank now, there's no need to panic with Thomas Frank, obviously. I think that there are clear work on. He obviously came into Tottenham Hotspur, right, with an objective to set us up and make us more defensively sound, to sort of fix those issues defensively first. And we're 9 games into the season, and those defensive issues have been fixed in a part. I think the performance was worrying last night in terms of the lack of pressure on the ball, sort of the way that our midfield got dominated at times, the way our defence was sort of really struggling to deal with those late runs into the box, etc., and the chances that Bodo created. But overall, defensively, we've been sound. It's now time to be a little bit braver, to start asserting our dominance in games more by making little tweaks like playing Xavi in the 10, sort of having more dominance in that sort of way, and progressing our in possession performances now, because we got the solid defensive foundations, we got that set up right. But in games where we're playing Bodo Glimt, in games where we're playing Leeds, in games where we're playing Wolves at home, we have to start being braver now. And I think that's the next step for Thomas Frank. But I'm still calm about Frank. I'm still very, very calm about him. I think he will adapt. I think that's what he's done his whole career, and I think that's what he'll do at Spurs. And I think that's what he'll do over the next sort of couple of months. You'll really see that sort of progression on that side of the game, because it's not rocket science. Everybody can see it, and everybody knows that that is what has to improve, and I think it will. And I'd like to see Archie Gray starting on Saturday, and I'd like to see Xavi Simons in the 10, but a positive cameo from Archie Gray, and obviously created the second goal. But in terms of the team that started, in terms of the setup, you know, it was confusing. I tweeted at the start of the game, I said, this might be a tough watch. I wanted to see Kinski in goal, sort of for that on-the-ball ability, and I just think he deserves a shot. I don't think Vicario has been good enough recently to deem that Kinski shouldn't get at least an opportunity in cup games or in Champions League games like that to come in and sort of have a go in that number one spot. And I get that you don't necessarily need to rotate the goalkeeper loads, and I don't think Kinski's been faultless since he stepped through the door at Spurs, but I would have liked to see him start, but I didn't mind Vicario being in goal. But Kevin Danso and Mickey van der Ven, I thought Van der Ven was actually really good last night in spells. I think there was a couple of great recovery tackles. He was getting frustrated, I think, and I think in possession you saw where we really missed Cuti Romero. I think you really saw that, because Danso, whilst I like Danso, just does not have the same on the ball ability. There was a couple of times in the second half where he was stepping forward with the ball and just completely over-hitting balls down the lines or through the channels, and I like that he tries that. I like that he's trying to move the ball forward and to progress the ball forward, and he's a good carrier, and I like Danso defensively, but unfortunately, when you're coming into cover for Cuti Romero, the drop-off is always going to be noticeable, and there's always going to be a bit of a difference there. Porro and Spence, I don't think Spence had his best game once again. I thought he was quite poor, to be completely honest. I thought Porro was quite poor defensively. Obviously, the moment of magic for the first goal, to get back into the game with the cross, but aside from that, not really loads. Some nice link-up, actually, for the second goal as well. So Porro did really help us from an attacking point of view in the second half, but like I said, defensively for Bodo Glimt's second goal, really poor from Porro, and in the first half, I think he was being caught out on a number of occasions. I don't know why I've got Paulinho in there, because it was actually Rodrigo Bentancur at the start of the game. And like I said, I thought Bentancur and Sarr were poor last night. I think they weren't tracking their men. I think there was a lack of intensity in their press, in their game. I think there was a lack of awareness at times as well. Bentancur obviously giving away the penalty. Sarr looked like he was off the pace a little bit. Whether he's still struggling with whatever kept him out of the Wolves game and the Brighton game, I'm not sure. But yeah, frustrating balance in midfield. Bergvall is not a number 10, Did well at points last night, Bergvall, but he's not a number 10. It's the last night was the perfect kind of game where you need Bergvall deeper. You would like Bergvall deeper, playing alongside a Paulinho, playing alongside a Bentancur, whoever he plays alongside in there, but you need him deeper and affecting the game, and you need a number 10 to instill that calmness, to instill that drive, to get us up the pitch. Part of being solid defensively is being able to retain possession and sustain attacks, and Xavi Simons in the 10 just allows us to do that so much better, and you saw that when he came on. I know he came on when we were sort of losing in the game, so it was easier to do that anyway. Bodo Glimt were naturally sitting off a little bit, but it has to happen at some point soon. It has to be Simons in the 10. And I'm not even saying Simons has showed anything absolutely outstanding yet that makes you go, oh my God, he can't not do it anymore. But it has to happen at some point. Frank has to start being braver. And against Leeds on Saturday, like I said, that has to happen, in my opinion. I think Johnson, look, I think there's wider conversations to be had about Brennan Johnson in terms of his future in this squad. I do, as brutal as it sounds, I really just think we're at that stage. And I think, again, how noticeable was that sort of improvement when Kudus came on in the second half? Like, Kudus did more in 3 minutes than Johnson did in 60. And I think we're at the stage with Johnson where, yes, I feel sorry for him playing out on the wide sort of right-hand side. It just doesn't suit his game at all. If you're asking him to contribute in any phase of possession that doesn't come sort of just affecting things around the penalty area, he is fairly useless at this stage. Like he just is. Like, you've got to call a spade, and unfortunately Brennan Johnson is just so ineffective in games like that. He really is. And Odegaard on the other side, he sort of was better in possession. I think he grew into the game in the second half a little bit. Obviously the header that he had that hit the bar, I think there were a couple of times where he took on his man and he created a little dangerous situation or won a set piece from it. But I think overall with Odegaard, I'm still after that sort of personality. I'm still after seeing that step up in his game where he's demanding the ball. He's being a little bit braver on the ball. When we're seeing the flashes with him, I'd like the flashes to be coming more regularly, and so that you're not thinking, oh, I want to see that more. I want to see it more regularly with Wilson Odegaard. But not a bad performance from him. And Richarlison, like I said, was just poor. Didn't really offer us much in terms of hold up or build up. Was getting isolated at times with the runs that he was making, and he just needs a rest. He needs a rest, man. The fact that Solanke just had surgery and Kolo Muani, God knows what's happening with him. Like, it's super frustrating at the moment that we're just relying solely on Richarlison. How ironic is it that Richarlison is the one that is fit? That he's the one out of the three that has been fit for the start of this season, when he's been the one who's been injured and cost us at times so much over the past couple of years with that. But look, we were missing Romero. Doggy didn't start. Simons and Kudus didn't start. Paulinho didn't start. It was a very much rotated team, but on Saturday against Leeds, that's now such an important game. We have to win that game. We need to make a statement. We need to go out with a win after a couple of poor draws in the last, week. But like I said with Spurs, nothing major to panic about, in my opinion. I don't think that there's anything that we really need to be overly concerned about or sort of draw big statements. Some of the stuff I've seen about Frank last night on Twitter. Obviously, Twitter is, a horrid place at the best of times. But some of the stuff I've seen about Frank on there, it's just like, can we just take a touch and just relax, man? Like, it will happen. We're in a good position after sort of 9-10 games of the season. We've progressed through to the next round of the Carabao Cup. We're 4 points out of 6 in the Champions League. We're in a decent position in that. We're 5th in the Premier League, or 4th, or wherever we are in the Premier League. We've still only lost 1 game under Thomas Frank. Hopefully this will come. There are obvious improvements, like I've mentioned throughout this video, to happen and to come. I think out of possession, I still think we looked so poor last night. Like I said, a lack of intensity that I talked about after the Wolves game, and I think that there's lots to go in possession, small fixes, more bravery, I think, in terms of that in possession setup under Thomas Frank. But we take the point, we move on from last night. We have to see more against Leeds. Like I said, I'd like Paulinho, I'd like Gray, I'd like Kudus in the... obviously, I'd like Kudus out wide, but I'd like Simmons in the 10. I'd like to see Audebert or Tell being given a go on the left-hand side again. It's kind of... Richarlison starting up front again, it will probably have to be. Romero hopefully comes back into that team. His injury and the reason to keep him out was more of a precaution, Thomas Frank said, so hopefully that's actually true and he's not out for 5 months like it so often happens when we're saying it's a precaution with an injury with Spurs recently. But look, like I said, we take the point, we move on. There's obviously work on those frustrations to our performance yesterday, but hopefully we fix that against Leeds and we give ourselves a bit of positivity going into the international break, because I can't even remember the last time we went into an international break not off the back of a loss or a poor performance. So please, Spurs, fix that this time. And yeah, I will see you in the next one. Like I said earlier on, if you are new to the channel, please like, please subscribe. That'd be greatly appreciated. And I will see you in the next one. Adios.